What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. Real quick, I want to read you a story of a current situation that's happening right now. So the president's Justice Department is trying to sentence the president's longtime critic and main opposition leader to years in prison with charges of extremism and telling the people to reject the legitimacy of the sitting president's administration and his agenda. And for that, he faces decades behind bars. The president's political opposition has been speaking out on social media, telling the people he's facing a Stalinist trial with a weaponized justice system. The political opponent reached out to the people and asked them to stand in solidarity with him and other political prisoners and to ask themselves the question, why would the president have to lock up his political opponents if the president truly believed in democracy and the rule of law? He also said that the president is coming after him to intimidate and to send a message to the people that nobody should question the president's legitimacy. These extremism charges aren't the only charges he faces. The political opponent also faces charges of terrorism for a violent event that took place in a city that ended in the death of one person. Even though he wasn't even present when the event took place, the president's Justice Department is still holding him accountable for the violence that took place that day and charging him with terrorism. His followers are showing up at his trial to show their support, even though they know what the outcome will be because they already understand that the justice system has been rigged and weaponized in order to keep the current president in power and to silence any other dissenters. You want to know something crazy, folks? That story I just read you is about what's happening in Russia right now with Vladimir Putin's political opposition. Vladimir Putin is persecuting his political opponents so that he could stay in power. And it is almost identical to what is happening here with our justice system that's being weaponized by the Biden administration. Oh, yeah. So I got an article here from Politico, came out August 4th, 2023, so 6 days ago. Hat tip to Claudia Chapa. And it's titled, Stalinist. Putin nemesis Alexei Navalny gets 19 more years in prison. Russian descendant faces decades behind bars. Yeah. So exactly the same thing we're watching happen here in our country is happening in Russia by Vladimir Putin. This should be eye-opening for everybody. If you can't tell the difference between what's happening here in the United States and a story that's unfolding in Russia, then we got some big issues. And I'm going to go ahead and read you this Politico article because the similarities between what Vladimir Putin is doing to his political opposition to what Joe Biden is doing here and the Department of Justice is doing to Donald Trump here in the United States is mind-blowing. And it is absolutely terrifying that people can't see what is happening. We cannot be compared to Vladimir Putin's Russia, okay? If you can compare what's taking place in the United States to what's taking place in Russia, then you better change course immediately. Immediately. Because it's not good. And that means you're acting more like Russia than you are the United States of America. So like I said, I got an article here. It's a little bit long, but I want you to hear every single word of it because it's important that you hear what is happening to Vladimir Putin's political opponent over there in Russia. So a Russia court on Friday sentenced opposition leader and Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny to an additional 19 years in a maximum security prison, finding him guilty on extremism charges in what critics have lambasted as a sham trial. Navalny, who is already serving a 9-year prison term in a maximum security facility in Melikovo, 250 kilometers east of Moscow, now faces decades behind bars. Prosecutors had requested a 20-year sentence for Navalny, who said on social media on Thursday before the verdict that he expected to receive a lengthy Stalinist sentence. Stalinist, folks. That is what's happening over there in Russia. Quote, when the figure is announced, please show solidarity with me and other political prisoners by thinking for a minute why such an exemplary huge term is necessary, he wrote. Its main purpose is to intimidate you, not me. Prosecutors have also asked for Navalny to be transferred to a special regime, a penal colony, likely more isolated and with restricted access, a request that was granted by the court. I'm going to try and pronounce this person's name. Yevgeny Smirnov from Pervy Odell, a law firm specialized in espionage and treason cases, said sending Navalny to a special regime colony is a, quote, way of increasing pressure on him even more. Quote, such prisons are reserved for those who instead of death sentence have been restricted in their freedom for life, and especially dangerous repeat offenders, Smirnov said. Political prisoners rarely fall in that category. In fact, in my memory, Navalny is the first. He said in the worst case, Navalny would be kept alone in a cell and only would be allowed a single long visit and a single parcel a year. Experts on Russia's prison system have also expressed concerns about Navalny's safety from fellow inmates if he were to be transferred to such a prison. Yeah. This is happening in Russia right now to Vladimir Putin's political opposition. This guy that criticizes Vladimir Putin and his stupid war on Ukraine. And what does Vladimir Putin do? Uses the justice system to target his political opponents and any dissenters. Almost identical to what we're watching happen here. And if people need to wake up, man, and wake up and smell the coffee. Snap out of it. So the article continues on. A harsh crackdown. A longtime critic and the main political opponent of Russian President Vladimir Putin, Navalny, 47, was arrested on his arrival back to Russia in January 2021 after being treated in Germany following a suspected Kremlin-sanctioned poisoning. At the time, the Kremlin denied Putin had ordered the Navalny's poisoning and said there was no reason to open a criminal investigation, a decision that was later condemned by the European Court of Human Rights. Well, yeah, why would he want to investigate something he knows he's responsible for? You see the corruption? The same corruption that we're watching unfold here in this country is the same type of tactics Vladimir Putin is using in Russia. So this is why I'm doing this story. Is so that people can see that what we're watching right now take place in our country is not normal. It is the stuff of the Soviet Union. It is the shit that comes out of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, okay? And I'm sorry, but I just don't want to live in a country that's comparable to Vladimir Putin's Russia. So the article continues. After returning to Russia, Navalny was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months for violating the terms of probation from an earlier sentence. In March 2022, he was given another 9-year sentence on fraud charges. Fraud charges. The extremism charges are not the end. Navalny is also facing an additional trial on terrorism charges in connection with an April bombing in St. Petersburg, which killed pro-war blogger Vladimir Tatarsky, according to Associated Press. Navalny, who was behind bars at the time of the attack, said he could face an additional 10 years for that charge. So you see, the same thing. The same correlations could be made. They're charging this guy for a violent event that took place when he wasn't even there. But because of his speech, he's being held liable. So imagine that. The same things that they do in Russia that Vladimir Putin does, they do not have a freedom of speech, okay? People are not allowed to say whatever they want against the Kremlin like we can here until now. And this is why people are saying what they're doing to Donald Trump and what they're doing to this justice system and our rule of law is disgusting. Not only is it disgusting, but our country will never be the same again. Ever. And the article continues. I'm going to keep going on. The similarities are breathtaking. So members of Navalny's team have said he has faced harassment in jail, being denied food and access to medical care. Navalny has accused the prison authorities of using various pretexts to place and keep him in solitary confinement in violation of Russian law. So they're violating the law, lawlessness, just like what's happening here. Complete lawlessness, a corrupt Department of Justice, and an intel community that does whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and nobody's held accountable. The article continues, after his imprisonment, a Russian court labeled Navalny's movement as extremist, which led to his network of campaign offices being shut down. With the government cracking down on his supporters, many have fled, gone underground, or have been locked up. Sound familiar? However, some allies of the opposition leader continued showing their support, organizing demonstrations inside and outside of Russia. On Friday, outside the prison gates, several dozen people, many of them young, waited in the afternoon sun in an expression of their support for Navalny, under the watchful eye of prison guards and police, some of whom asked passers-by for their documents. European Council President Charles Michel called Friday's verdict unacceptable, saying it is, quote, yet another sham trial against Navalny. Quote, this arbitrary conviction is the response to his courage to speak critically against the Kremlin's regime, Michael said. I reiterate the EU's call for the immediate and unconditional release of Mr. Navalny. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said the new sentence raises serious concerns about judicial harassment and instrumentalization of the court system for political purposes in Russia, according to a statement from his office. So, a weaponizing of the justice system. So, the UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, is saying that Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin are weaponizing their justice system in order to crush his political dissent. Okay? Sound familiar? All right, almost done here. Showing support. A handful of people gathered in front of the penal colony in Melikovo ahead of Friday's verdict, braving long journeys in sweltering summer heat to express their support. Many of those who spoke to Politico had traveled for hours to the penal colony in Melikovo in a show of support for Navalny, despite having no illusion about the outcome of the case. Kind of like what we're watching happen here in Washington, D.C. Not in Florida, not in any other state. They're bringing all these cases in D.C. All these judges all know each other. The whole damn judicial system in our nation's capital is corrupt. It is corrupt as hell, man. They all hang out with each other. I'm telling you, folks, I would not wish this type of justice on anybody, not even my worst enemy. These people have been manipulated by the media. These people, even these judges, are human. They are only human. They can be propagandized just like anybody else. And the media, if the media is good at one thing, it is certainly good at brainwashing and propagandizing people, because we've been watching it for the last 8 years. How many investigations? How many impeachments? How many hoaxes have we watched? The Russia collusion hoax, impeachment 1, impeachment 2. All of it was lies. But somehow all these people believed it. And when it comes out that it was all a fucking hoax, they just move on to the next damn hoax. And here we are again with the same damn thing. And this has been happening for almost a decade. Think about that, folks. Almost 10 years. These people have been under the influence of our state government-controlled media apparatus. These people have been completely destroyed. Their brains have been toast. They're psychologically and emotionally broken people. So, quote, in Russia, people get these kind of sentences simply for saying the truth, said Alexander, a lanky 18-year-old economics student with green eyes who had traveled for several hours by train and car from Yaroslavl. I believe that there should be no place for such lawlessness in this modern world. Refused access on the prison grounds, he had spent hours waiting in the burning sun together with other supporters, while police guards approached them one by one and jotted down their personal details. Quote, I know they'll be on my doorstep soon, said Alexander, but I'm not ashamed of my views. Well, you know what, Alexander? You show a lot more courage than 50% of our country right now. Because the same way this person's thinking is how I feel. I'm not afraid to get on here and tell people my views. I know I'm being listened to. I know my name's being jotted down. I know all of us are. Every single conservative podcaster and YouTuber and content creator are red flagged constantly, waiting for the time to say something, and these people are going to start targeting us. That's what's going to happen. What you're watching right now is just the beginning. What it ends up being in about 5 or 6 years, when Democrats have full control of our government is they will start coming after anybody who supports Donald Trump or anybody talking the way that I'm talking right now. They will come knock on my door and they will say, we're from the IRS and we have some questions. Or they'll say, we're from the FBI and we have a search warrant to search your home. And then from there on, they will find anything that they can charge me with. The same kind of shit that happened in the Soviet Union against people that dissented against Stalin's regime. We're watching the beginning of a totalitarian Marxist regime. And it starts out with Donald Trump. It starts out with the 16 Michigan alternate electors that have been indicted on 8 felony charges. And if convicted of these charges, they will be sent to spend the rest of their life in prison. So therefore, they're being sent to their death. This is how it all starts. You think it's just Donald Trump, and then they start coming after everybody. This is what happens in totalitarian regimes. We've seen it over and over and over again throughout history. And this is why it's so important for people to read and study history. Something that the left and the Democrats know nothing about. Nothing. Everything they know about history has been absolutely distorted, like a 1619 project. Half of these people don't even know that white people did not invent slavery. All these people have been indoctrinated, and this is why it's so scary. Because just like Stalin knew, just like Marcuse knew, you have to get the schools. All you need is a generation of students, and you can turn them into revolutionaries. And that is exactly what we're watching take place in our country right now. And if people do not wake up, I promise you, it is going to turn into something that we seen in Germany in the 1930s. It is not going to be good. And honestly, I think a lot of these Democrats that I see on Twitter would have no problem the Department of Justice targeting Trump supporters because they would justify every single second of it. They would say, oh, that's what they get for supporting a criminal, or that's what they get for supporting Donald Trump. They deserve to spend the rest of their life in prison, no matter what it is. The Department of Justice can just make shit up, just like they're doing with Donald Trump. They can make shit up and start coming after every single influencer, every single Republican Trump supporter, every single Republican content creator or podcaster, and start finding charges to charge these people with and just send them the way to prison for the rest of their life. And this is how this stuff works. And you would have millions of people, the Democrat, the leftist Bolsheviks on Twitter, perfectly okay with that. I see some people say it. I seen during the pandemic them saying to round up Republicans and put them in a re-education camp. I've heard these people talk this way. This is what happens when you have a disgusting failure of a media. Is exactly what we're watching now, the rise of a totalitarian regime. And it's going to happen because the same shit that we're watching happen, take place in our country right now, is the same shit that's happening in Russia by Vladimir Putin. So I want to get back to what these supporters said. So this guy, Alexander, says, I know they'll be on my doorstep soon, but I'm not ashamed of my views. Okay, 2 female supporters stood outside the prison gates 2 hours before the sentencing was scheduled to take place. Alina, 60 years old, said she had traveled overnight from St. Petersburg to attend the hearing. Quote, it's for my own conscience, she told Politico, and for Navalny to see that he has support. She was carrying a bag with water, tea, and an umbrella in case the weather turned. Another woman, also called Alina, was 53, with her brown hair tied into a pigtail, had gotten up at 4 a.m. to make the journey from Moscow. Quote, many of those who support Navalny have fled to avoid being mobilized, she said. We are women of a certain age and don't run that risk. So Roman, a fashionable 18-year-old dressed in a Yankees cap, sunglasses, and a Japanese anime shirt, traveled 3 hours by train and 3 hours by car from Shokovaska, a town in Moscow region, with his 16-year-old girlfriend. Quote, this way we show others that they are not alone in their opposition to Putin to the war. Maybe it will inspire others too, he said. Asked whether he thought his presence outside the penal colony could have repercussions, he said, quote, sooner or later it undoubtedly will, but it's not worth being scared. I've already understood that there won't be a good end to all of this either way. He's right. So I ask you, at what point are people going to wake up? Like, at what point are people going to be like, oh, damn, we live in a totalitarian nation now? Like, at what point? Like, what rights have to be removed or stripped from Americans in order for them to wake up? You have the Democrat Party and this weaponized political system. This it's not even Democrats, it's Republicans too. Look at Chris Christie, look at Mike Pence, look at Bill Barr, look at all these Republicans out there on the stump for Democrats. What they're trying to do is criminalize Donald Trump and anybody that supports him. They're trying to criminalize a political movement. That is what they're trying to do. I did an episode where we talked about how the FBI is characterizing Trump supporters as white supremacists and domestic terrorists. That's happening right now in our intel agencies and the FBI. Once they get that characterization down, they'll be able to justify the persecution of anybody that supports Donald Trump. Anybody that dissents from Joe Biden, anybody that talks negatively about elections being stolen, the 2020 election being stolen. Think about that, folks. They're trying to lock Donald Trump up in prison for saying he thought the 2020 election was stolen. For thinking. He was thinking. And so was I. Millions and millions of Americans know that something happened in the 2020 election. What, are they going to come after all of us? This is the type of behavior you see from a rising tyranny. That is what you have. Our founders, I know it's cliche to say it, our founders would be rolling in their graves. They would be. You have to understand and think about what the founders would be thinking right now with a presidential administration weaponizing his Department of Justice, using lawfare to persecute his political opponents, to influence in a federal election. What do you think the founders would think? What do you think they would do? I don't know. They just got done fighting a revolutionary war for this place. They were certainly revolutionaries, but for freedom, for the opposite of what the Democrat Party wants. The Democrat Party does not want unity. They want conformity. They don't want equality. They want equity. Equal outcomes, not equal opportunities. They want people to bend the knee to their agenda, to their ideology. When they come out and say that climate change is an existential threat, anybody that differs with them is evil. Seriously. Anybody that differs with their agenda, in their mind, needs to be destroyed. They don't even want to debate anymore, folks. They don't even want to talk about ideas. They want their ideas implemented, and they want them implemented now. Because they know what's best, and they think that they're smarter than everybody. You've seen this type of behavior during the pandemic. When the vaccines rolled out, they called people that didn't want to take the vaccine terrorists, grandma killers, baby killers. They did not want to debate on the science. The science would change at any moment in order to support what they wanted. These people are broken. These people are revolutionaries. And ladies and gentlemen, the revolution is here. It is here already. It is not coming. It is here. This is the revolution. And so it is vital. It is extremely vital that people wake up and see what is going on. Donald Trump is irrelevant at this point. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. They're just using him to come for the rest of us. That is what they're doing. When Nancy Pelosi, after January 6th, when Nancy Pelosi put machine gun nests on our nation's capital and barbed wire fence, that wasn't to protect a building. They didn't even have ammo. That was to send a message. You do not push back on this party. You do not dissent from what we say. I'm telling you, if you think that is bad, wait till what is coming next. And like I said, once they get through Donald Trump, they're coming for the rest of us. And it will all be justified. All of it. Just like it's being justified now. These people think like the tyrannies tyrannies rise overnight and that it's going to be completely noticeable. Democracy dies in the dark for a reason. What they mean to say is democracy dies and nobody actually sees it until it's too late. They said we had a republic if we could keep it. The reason why they said that is because they knew that somebody or something would try and take it away. This Democrat Party is the most destructive political force we have ever seen in this country, ever. And it always has been. The Democrat Party has always been the revolutionaries, going all the way back to the Civil War, when they wanted to separate from the rest of the Union. They wanted slavery. They didn't want to abolish slavery. That was the Democrat Party, folks. The Democrats are the party of the Confederates. And there's many, many examples of this. Like I said, Mark Levin is coming out with a book, and it cannot come out soon enough. Because if I know Mark Levin, I know this guy's book is going to be absolutely devastating to the Democrats. He's going to air out all their dirty laundry for everybody to see. When it comes to the KKK, when it comes to slavery, when it comes to anti-civil rights, when it comes to busing, when it comes to discrimination, when it comes to segregation. The Democrat Party have always supported the ideas that left stains on America. All the negative things that have happened in this country have been done by Democrats. I'm serious, and Mark Levin is going to call that out and show the people in his book when it comes out in September. And like I said, it cannot come out soon enough. I already pre-ordered it because I know that this guy is he's probably got notes to everything. He's got references to everything. And so that the American people can see who the Democrat Party really is. Because there's one thing the Democrats are really, really good at, and that is owning the language. They are masters at this. They are masters at this. This is how people think that it's the Republicans that are the racists, when in reality, it was the Republicans who abolished slavery. Hundreds of thousands of white men died to abolish slavery so that their fellow men, their fellow Americans can be free. It was the Confederate, the Democrat Party, that did not want it to go away. So hopefully his book comes out soon. We certainly need it. But I just wanted to drive the direct comparison to what is happening right now in the United States with our justice system and how they're weaponizing it against Donald Trump using crazy theories, novel law theories, and it is wild and crazy what they're trying to do. They are treating Donald Trump as he's a terrorist. There are terrorists that get treated better than Donald Trump does. And when I say that, I am serious. I am dead serious. Donald Trump cannot even find attorneys. He's spent almost $400 million on legal fees. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to kneecap him so that they can influence the election. So that come election time, they can say, oh, he's been twice impeached, 50 times investigated, this and that. How could you possibly support that guy? This is what these people do. They bring these bullshit charges and these bullshit impeachments, and then they sit there and say, well, how could you vote for a guy that's been impeached? It's because you brought a bullshit impeachment that shouldn't have been brought. That's how. Because everyone is starting to see right through the Democrats' bullshit. They're starting to see how awful this administration is, just like I warned everybody it would be. This administration, this president, Joe Biden, is awful. And it's not him, it's the people that are around him. This guy can barely even walk. He should be in a nursing home. There are other people behind the scenes pulling the strings. And I can almost guarantee you is some of the most awful people this country has to offer. And they have some of the worst ideas and some of the most evil plans for this country. Because we're watching it unfold right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not want a justice system that persecutes political opponents and takes political prisoners. We do not want this. They've got 1,000 people already charged, arrested for what happened on January 6th. Like the Germans used the Reichstag fire back in the 1930s, is how the Democrats used the January 6th Capitol riot, calling it an insurrection. That is how they're justifying locking up anybody that supports Donald Trump, or it's what they're using to take Donald Trump out. Everybody knows that was not an insurrection. Everybody. But somehow they've convinced people that what happened on January 6th was some unprecedented thing that has never happened before, and it's the worst thing that's happened since Pearl Harbor. After we just went through an entire summer of riots by Democrats. The Vice President Kamala Harris sending up bail funds, sharing bail funds for BLM and Antifa that were burning cities down, burning courthouses, burning police precincts. In some cases, with police officers inside, they were trying to burn them alive. Luckily, they got out. What we seen in 2020 was closer to an insurrection than anything that happened on January 6th that day. Nobody even had any guns on January 6th. They're trying to convince the people that what happened on January 6th was Donald Trump and his supporters were trying to overthrow the government. Nobody believes it. Nobody believes it, except for the people that have been propagandized by MSNBC and CNN, their media outlets. The same people that were propagandized for the Russia collusion hoax, the impeachments. These people have a confirmation bias, and they do nothing but believe their confirmation bias. That is it. These people cannot snap out of it. They're broken. They're emotionally and psychologically broken. And so I thought it was important that you guys see the correlations between what Vladimir Putin is doing to his political opponents is almost identical to what Joe Biden and the Democrats are doing to their political opponents. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting ready. This was just a short show. It's not a full show. I'm getting ready to work on that right now. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Tons of stuff. There was some crazy stuff that happened in Michigan with this giant election scandal and tens of thousands of voter registrations being filled out. It was a police raid that had short-barreled rifles and silencers and stuff. Crazy. So we're going to be getting into that and see what's going on. I gave it about 48 hours. This happened a couple days ago from Jim Hoft over there at the Gateway Pundit. I wanted to talk about it, but I kind of wanted to get more details about it. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that. We're going to talk about what's happening at the southern border. The southern border is still a disaster, and as many times as I've been asking the question, I cannot get an answer to who benefits. What is the motive behind letting millions and millions of illegal immigrants into this country? So that's something we're going to be talking about. We got a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about on the next episode, and just like always, we're going to try and squeeze it in within an hour. If not, then I'll make another show. I have tons of stuff to talk about, especially with the Biden classified documents. Where's that investigation at? We haven't heard anything from the special counsel. There's been no leaks coming out of the special counsel, even though there's something that leaks out of Jack Smith's office every other day. So every time there's incriminating evidence that comes out about the Biden family and all their corrupt deals, which is something else we're going to be talking about, the Jack Smith Department of Justice comes out with another superseding indictment or another leak to the media or whatever the case is. This is information warfare, folks. We are in full-blown information warfare. And just like I've been telling all my colleagues and all my friends, trust nothing that comes from the media. Nothing. You have to question everything that is being said right now because you are being manipulated. I did a show about this a few days ago where John Podesta's wargaming of the 2020 election actually involved using the media as a tool to sway the minds of the public. And so that is most certainly what they're doing. They use the media as a propaganda tool now. And so that's why I tell everybody to be on their toes and just question everything. That is it. So that's what we're going to be talking about. A whole bunch of stuff we got to talk about. But I wanted to get this out to you. I just made this comparison just now. I wrote up a quick little monologue. All I did was change out the names of Donald Trump and replaced it with political opponent. And that was it. Is that not mind-blowing? How I can read a story about Russia and it's almost identical to what is happening here in the United States of America. Pretty wild stuff. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to cut this up. I'm going to get it out to you today. So, as always, thank you for tuning in. I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great week. God bless you. God bless America. Later.